You're good to
Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all enjoying the beautiful weather we have out there. Today, we're having our planning committee meeting to reappoint. Many individuals have already given up quite a bit of time to be on our historic association. So we will be meeting them. There's some who weren't able to make it to today's meeting. But unless the committee has any hesitations or any questions they'd like to ask them specifically, I'll ask that we move forward with their names since they have already been serving on these committees. And it's just a reappointment process. Again, main reason we're doing it, where we're asking them to come in, is so that they can meet some of our new members and for our new members to be able to get more familiar with different organizations we have. So I'm gonna get the meeting going, and I'll ask Eden if you'd be willing to do roll call for us, please. And then I'll go right to you, Tom, after we're done with roll call.
So everyone, a part of the planning committee that's here is Alfredo Ballerin, Thomas Hoey, Sergio Adams, Edward Hyde Clark, and Deborah Zamer. And other council members is Megan Keegan. That's it. Just Megan Keegan.
Okay, Tom, you have
And
any questions?
Danielle Gillespie and me. Sorry.
No,
Yeah, I
that's
did,
fine, thank
Alfredo.
you.
Will they come in for the full council then? Because we got an email, as you probably know, from Richard Conti saying that we've expanded the duties of the HRC. Will we have a chance to ask the people who couldn't make it tonight questions in person, or?
Yeah, we can ask them to come to caucus if people feel comfortable with that. That's always an option.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have to pass anyone we don't feel comfortable with, or we want to wait for them to come to a caucus. That's something we can do as well. Okay, then who do we have first?
First, we have John Myers. I can admit him.
Thank you. John, thank you for joining us. We're going to give everyone just a quick 5 minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you looking for reappointment, and then we'll open it up for council members if they have any questions. So John, the floor is yours. Mr. Myers, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Myers? Eaton, can you call Mr. Myers?
He's unmuted. He was muted before.
Okay. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, sir? Mr. Myers, can you hear us? I'm not sure if he can hear us.
So if you want, we can call him and maybe you can move on to the next candidate and then we'll troubleshoot and see what difficulty he's having accessing Zoom, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I can let in the next person. Okay, there's someone called Adirondack Architectural Heritage.
That's Erin. That's
That's
Erin
Erin?
Tobin. Yeah.
Okay, great. She's actually the next one.
Hi, Emmett. How are you? Can you hear us? Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you for your willingness to be reappointed. We're going to allow all the members to, everyone to introduce themselves for just a quick 5 minutes, give us a little brief bio of what you've done and what you look to continue to do. And then we'll open it up for 5 minutes for council members to ask questions. So the floor is yours, Evan.
Sorry, I was trying, did you say you want me to give I was trying to wrap up something that was going on while I was waiting. You want me to give a brief bio? Is that what you said?
Yeah, just a quick, short, brief, just a little bit about what work you've done and what work you look to continue to do on the board.
Sure. I am so I've been very honored to participate on the Historic Resources Commission. My sense of timing is off because of COVID. I think I joined in August of 2018, if my memory is correct. I joined for the year before we moved over to the Henry Johnson Boulevard building. And that was, we were there for a year before COVID. So that's how I keep it in mind. And I've been really delighted to be a part of the commission. I think it serves a really valuable function in the city. I think that working through the city's preservation plan, which was completed, I think that was right before COVID, that was completed, and that was an excellent project. Sorry, this was, I'm taking care of my kids who are hungry because it's dinner time. So, and I think that the city's made a lot of progress towards integrating historic preservation in its comprehensive plan and general planning and zoning, really over the last several years. I moved to Albany in 2004 when our oldest was a 1-year-old, and my husband and I moved up here for a job that he took, and I worked for Historic Albany Foundation for the first 2 years that we lived in Albany. I lived up in Stonehenge Gardens on Buckingham Pond, and then we bought a row house on Hamilton Street by Dove in the Hudson Park Historic District. We lived there for 6 years in Albany. For my entire time here, I was a resident of a historic district and a homeowner in a historic district, having completed rehabilitation projects, interior and exterior, on my own house and seeing how that went through. Of course, I've been in historic preservation for over 20 years. I finished my graduate degree in preservation in 1999. And have worked in the field ever since then. So I was at Historic Albany, then I went to the Preservation League of New York State, where I worked for 14 years. In that time, my husband and I had 2 more children, and with 3 kids, we wanted to stay downtown, but we couldn't find a house for sale big enough that met our family, our impending family members' time frame. So we moved to Pine Hills, and I live on Mercer Street in another beautiful historic neighborhood. And actually, the advocacy issue that was percolating when I first moved to Albany was when CVS was threatening to purchase the Madison Theater and demolish it and the building next door, the laundromat and the existing CVS, for a big drive-through CVS. And that was in 2004. And the community came together very strongly against that. And that Save the Madison effort that I was on the steering committee for, that is really how I met my closest friends in Albany. And I think was one of the catalysts for recognizing the importance of saving historic buildings, not just in the downtown neighborhoods, but throughout the entire city of Albany. And whether they're locally designated or on the National Register, or just known to be good, urban pedestrian oriented planning. I think it's been really great to see that happen. A year or 5 months ago, I started working for Adirondack Architectural Heritage. So I'm the executive director of that regional historic preservation nonprofit, covering the 11 or 12 counties of the North Country. And I'm delighted to be a part of the Historic Resources Commission. So that is my bio in a nutshell. We still live in Albany. I'm coming to you from Pine Hills right now. Our 3 kids. We have a son at Myers Middle School, another son at Albany High, and a daughter who's a freshman in college.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Tom?
Yeah, hi, Aaron. And we know each other. We've met on some soccer fields. And I'm very impressed. I didn't know your background, and I'm very excited that you have that historic, studies in your background. We did expand the role of the historic resource. Is it corporation? I'm not sure. I just know it as HRC, but we have expanded. And I guess my one question is, has that helped? And has that been implemented? The more powers that we granted through the council, and then I just would like, because I've talked to the some of the planners in the city about, when we think of historic buildings, we think of something hundreds of years old, and that what about from the 30s, 40s, 50s, that type of architecture? Are we saving enough of that? And what comes to mind is the steel houses that are down off Washington Avenue. I mean, nobody has that like we do. But I was just wondering about your thoughts on those two things. Thanks.
Sure. So yes, the Lustron houses over on Germain Street are a great example of 20th century buildings that is actually a National Register Historic District. Just like the houses that were part of the Great Migration on Rapp Road, representing the migration of African-American families from a Southern community to Albany and to that specific neighborhood and place because of the landscape. So I think that historic preservation in general has shifted over the last 20 years, especially in the last 10 years, to think about telling a complete history and story of a place. It's not, and it shouldn't be about the people with the most privilege who could build the most beautiful buildings, but it should be about the history and the culture of a community. And in terms of the expansion of the commission, I think that the workshop model has worked really well. And I think that the vacant building reports, I think we're getting there. Back in 2004, when I moved to Albany and started working for Historic Albany Foundation, there was a neighborhood planning effort underway in Arbor Hill, and then another one in the South End that I took part in. Historic Albany had just done their first vacant building survey. Despite all the demolitions that have occurred in the last 17 or 18 years, we still have, I think, the same number of vacant buildings. So something's got to change. But that said, I was at the Albany Fund for Education fundraiser last Friday at the St. Joseph's Academy. And back in 2004 and 2005, that was a long abandoned building at North Swan Street. Had very little life on it. And I was really happy to see not just that St. Joseph's is active, but that there's storefronts on North Swan and people like out on the street. And I think that's really important. So, I think the issue with vacant buildings is one that takes just a lot of time, and code violations are a key part in understanding how to address that issue. And I appreciate that the Common Council having that balance in making sure that the code, that everybody's talking to each other.
Thank you, Aaron.
Deb?
Hi, Aaron. I was just going to say, quickly, Aaron's a constituent of mine and who I've just come to know rather recently, and the city is lucky to have you on the commission. I know this is a real passion of yours, architecture and Albany history, and you're such a great resource. So thank you. One question I'd spoken to a few people in planning about was expanding the National Registry and thinking about capturing mid-century homes that you see in our ward, these really exquisite examples of mid-century homes. So is that something that you think, I'm just curious, and this is something, we don't have to get into it necessarily right now, but if this is something, I'm just wondering if it's something that you're exploring on the commission, or is it something that you talk about?
We have absolutely talked about it, and I think it's come up in the preservation plan. And there are so many neighborhoods. Albany was so undersurveyed for many, many years. And the addition of incentives like the historic homeowner tax credit that we have in New York State, and the fact that the entire city of Albany qualifies for that historic homeowner credit, those are very new things. And a lot of cities are playing catch up in survey and National Register designation. I think Albany is getting there, and we've definitely talked about it in the commission. I think that I think part of the challenge is we don't even know where to begin because there's so much to do. So I think we talked about Delaware Ave, which has been that neighborhood has been previously surveyed, actually a nomination ready to go. Pine Hills and all of Uptown is, it would be a very expensive project. And we've talked a lot about whether you can carve it up, whether you do the whole thing. A lot of cities, like the city of Rochester, just did a huge survey for a massive historic district that's like 2 miles long on axis. And we almost need something like that, which would probably be about $60,000. But it would be an incredible investment to get that survey work done so that all of these potential districts could be recognized, and then you go and designate them bit by bit. But you have to figure out what you have, and that's what we've been talking about, figuring out what we have, going in bit by bit to say, okay, here's the designated, here's the the Woodlawn neighborhood historic district, or the Helderberg, or I'm just picking that off, but things like that. We have such a rich history, and there's a lot there, but we have talked about it.
Great,
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to working with you on that.
Thank you. Any other questions from non-committee members? Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your service to our city, and thank you for your continuous service. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's nice to see you all, many who I know. So thanks. Have a great night.
Have a good night.
So we'll try John again.
John, how are you?
Good, thank you. I finally got this to work.
That's okay. Well, thank you for joining us. So we're going to give all the commission members an opportunity to just share a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your bio, what you've done and what you look to continue to do on the commission. And then we'll leave about 5 to 6 minutes to allow any questions. So
Okay.
I put the floor. You've got the floor, John.
All right, thank you. My name is John Myers. I'm the current chair of the commission. I've been a member of the commission since 1988 when it was first implemented. So I do bring a bit of historical knowledge of how the commission operates to this whole experience. I am a licensed architect. I am a principal with Einhorn Yaffe Prescott in Albany. I've done numerous projects in Albany, including Union Station and the Palace Theater and some other opportunities around the state. And most recently in my professional work, I've been working on projects for the U.S. Department of State, many of which do involve historic preservation of overseas facilities that are operated by the Department of State for embassies and consulates. So I do bring a fair amount of preservation experience and professional architectural experience to the commission. And I think that has stood well in terms of finding realistic and practical solutions for applicants that do come to the commission looking for help and assistance. I see the commission as really a constructive resource in the community, and hope to further that. I have recently retired from full-time employment at EYP and will be devoting a bit more of my time to the work of the commission, since I am only working part-time now. I've done that for almost 50 years, so I figured it was time to pass the baton. So that's a little bit of my background and experience, and look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you. Tom.
Hi, John, and again, thank you for your service. Very impressed with the amount of time that you've been, working on this, and happy that you're going to continue to work. I had just two questions. The first one is, because I've talked to some of the planners, when I think of historic, I think of something 100 years or 200 years ago. But, it's hard to realize, because I'm getting ancient myself, that buildings built around the time I was born are getting to that, stage where they could be considered historic. I'm just curious about, what your thoughts on that. And I brought up about the steel buildings, that are in the 14th ward. I think they're called lustrum houses.
Oh, yeah, the lustrum houses.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a very unique thing. It's special to Albany. And then the other question I had was, how do you feel? I mean, last year we expanded the power of the HRC. We gave you more leadway. Has that been helpful? Have you been able to use those extra powers that we granted? And moving forward, do you need anything else? I guess would be the big question. Thanks.
Well, I think, to your first question, certainly buildings, when they reach the 50-year mark, that does make them eligible for consideration for historic designation. And, we have certainly, a city as old as Albany, even 50 years ago, we've got a large number of buildings that, and some have been coming to us recently in the commission, projects that Redburn Development has been pursuing, that they have sought historic designation and asked for a recommendation. The additional powers that we've been granted, I think it was very helpful to have the Common Council introduce the legislation for us to be involved in doing these vacant building assessments and reports on the emergency actions that the building department has undertaken. And we look forward to, we've had several conversations with Rick LaJoy and Sam Wells and other members within the vacant building analysis, as well as the building department, to encourage their actions to try and forestall demolition and whatever is practical to preserve buildings, or at least stabilize for further preservation work. And the report, the interim report that we did based on the first 6 months of work that had been done, was actually pretty eye-opening in terms of mapping where these actions have taken place and the history of those actions, and where it has had a profound impact on some of the historic districts, particularly in the South End. And some of the shoulder areas that around historic districts where demolition continues to be an issue. So we want to work with all the resources at our disposal to try and assist the building department and look for sources of support for keeping what we have and working to expand the designation of districts to avail the citizenry of Albany to the benefits of investment tax credits and other options that could be made available with designation for preservation and stabilization of buildings.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions by any other council members? Okay, if not, thank you very much again, Mr. Meyer, for all your time and dedication to our city on your many, many years of service.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to continuing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Good luck with this process.
Okay, then who else? Who do we have next on the docket?
Chris Hacker is the next one.
Okay. Mr. Hacker, thank you for joining us.
Hello there.
We're gonna ask all the commission members to give us a little bit about yourself, roughly within 3 to 5 minutes, and then we'll open it up for committee members and council members to ask any questions. So the floor is yours.
To introduce myself. Again, my name is Chris Hacker. I'm the owner of Albany Artisans. I am a carpenter. The one thing that Albany has and can be really proud of is its variety of architecture and all its buildings. What I do is I have a team that's growing that performs restoration of old buildings. And that's what we do. That's how I landed myself on the commission. I was actually also the construction manager for the Saratoga Surrender site, which is the Saratoga National Historical Park. I don't know if you heard any of that.
No, we got it.
I'm a local boy.
No, well, thank you. Any questions from committee members? Deborah.
Hi, Chris. First of all, I think we used to run around when we were little, like on Winthrop Avenue.
Yeah. That's
Your
correct.
younger sister. Yeah. That was, yes, and all around Washington Avenue. But anyway, I just want to thank you for your service on the commission. And I'm curious about your take on the legislation that the council passed last year, which hopefully enabled the commission to have some input on demolitions and whatnot. Has that been working?
To be a little bit honest, and I'll speak frankly, I'm a little bit disappointed. I would have liked to think that we would get a bit more information and try to be a little bit more proactive. When we see an emergency demolition, there has to have had some signals or some flags that have gone up. And it would have been nice if the Historic Resource Commission was in communication before the building was torn down. Could anything we have done on our end to stave that off, whether it be stabilization or the other? When we find out after the fact, there were flags that had gone up, whether the lawn hasn't been getting mowed or the front door has been torn off, or there's obviously a hole through the roof. They've been flagged and they've gotten code violations, but we don't usually hear until the buildings have already come down, if we do hear at all.
And I'm like 5 minutes old on the council. So, but my understanding is that this was supposed to remedy that. Okay. No, it's
I'm not
important to
certain
know.
we're there yet. I don't believe we're there yet. No,
Okay,
I don't think so.
okay.
And I wish.
Well, I
so.
appreciate your honesty, and that's something that hopefully we can work on.
Super.
Thank you. Tom, you had your hand up next?
Sure. Hi, Chris. And again, thank you for your service. And I love hearing that you're a carpenter. You know, my dad was a carpenter. So, you know, further going on what Deb had brought up, I know that when, you know, I've had it in my ward where somebody passes away and they have no relatives or nobody to step in, that the houses stay vacant until, until the tax foreclosure happens. And it takes 3 to 5 years. You know, do you think that might be some of the reasons that we're not acting fast enough? Or I guess
no.
my question is, and I don't mean to, is there something that you see, like, or you could tell us, or in the future tell us, maybe further legislation that would help, you know, moving on?
That is a great question, you know, because those are like those unforeseens, and then they arrive, and it wasn't planned nor intentional, whether for whatever reason or the building becomes vacant, and yet no plan put in place. Yeah, it's all really tricky. So, you know, there could be a softer side to all this that's outside of our hands. I think when a building does start to get its violations, it does recognize the fact that we got to keep a closer eye on this. And I think maybe that might be some of the time to notify what the Historic Resource Commission could add to that. I don't know what that just yet. And I think that discussion really needs to be had. And that's a really good question.
Okay. And my other question I've asked the other people who are reappointing is, how do you feel about, you know, and I found out from John that after 50 years, a building can be considered historic. And I'm just worried about, because I've seen a lot of buildings coming down, you know, from the 40s and actually 30s, 40s and 50s and 60s. And especially the ones in the 60s, because they don't, well, maybe they would be hitting the 50-year mark. But it's nice to have a sample throughout the city of different years of, you know, building, the styles, the architectural styles. I'm just wondering about your thoughts on that. Because when we think of historic, we think of hundreds of years. But,
Yeah.
you know, historic could be, you know, the 30s, actually.
I think one of the challenges that what comes with the expansion of historic districts is educating the community to it. Some people, well, I don't want anyone saying what I can and cannot do with my building. And then there's the others that say, well, I want to do it this way, and I believe in this. So I think we have even in our oldest historic districts, you know, maybe Center Square being, I don't know about the oldest, but, you know, up there. Even to this day, there's questions of people that they don't understand what the ordinances are in the historic districts. So it's a lot of education that still has to happen as we expand our historic districts to the benefits of it, and largely the benefits of it. And then there's some that in some ways, I think we even need to peel back some of our ordinances. We have communities where if they needed to replace all their windows with wooden windows, that would be a year's salary, and it just isn't feasible. But we don't want to lose those buildings in those historic districts. So is there something that we can do to change that ordinance, whether it be, let's maintain the historic opening, what you put in there is what you can afford. I feel like I'm really going out on a limb and saying some of these things, but I think they're things that would help us meet the community when it comes to historic districts.
Yeah, you opened up a thing I didn't realize. So that's a great point out the window. So thank you for bringing that up. And there's probably other things that we don't realize, like, you know, you have to keep the original door and you can't replace it. So that I didn't realize that. So thank you for, you know, making me aware of it.
I think we have districts that need a lenience. I think this was part of the preservation plan. It was never really put out there what exactly a conservation district is, but this could be our opportunity to create what a conservation district looks like.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Sergio?
Hi, thank you, Chris, for joining us. And thank you for your time serving. We just kind of segue into what I wanted to kind of speak about in terms of the scale of the projects that you are dealing with. And if you could provide us like some examples of the different work that is being done to stabilize some of these properties or make alterations to them.
Well, gosh, I've had lots of opportunities to see a lot of different things. Probably, I've been in business as Albany Artisans for the last 15 years, and I'm certain we have turned over 20 plus vacant properties in the city of Albany. I've seen them in all different sorts of conditions, whether they lost the roof drain and there's a hole from the center of the roof all the way down, and the hole gets bigger as you go down, by the way. So we've been in all different situations, purchased from the land bank with the use of historic tax credits. The two owners that I primarily got passed and back and forth from were always going after historic tax credits, which also gave me the opportunity to learn the process of, first of all, what it means to meet an historic ordinance. Wow, we've had so many different experiences, whether I'm kind of losing your question there, but
just kind of how much are these projects costing?
Oh, if we had a purchase building, well, we have a project right now going on the corner of Elk and Lark Street, where we're expected to spend about $300,000. Now, without the tax credit program there, which it just wouldn't be feasible for most or many, and it is a burden. It is a hurdle. That is one thing I do like about being on the commission and working in the community, is how I interact and get to talk to people and find practical solutions. But that's a big thing. The project becomes viable with the tax credits.
Right. And is there, or do you find that there's certain neighborhoods where it's easier to get some of those tax credits than others?
Most of the projects on Dove Street, we did a lot on Dove Street, now a little bit on Lower Lark, and I guess it's called the Elberon Triangle up on Washington Avenue, or Western. That's Western right there. Western and Elberon. I do think a lot of the land bank properties that we purchased and done have been a little bit on the periphery of the cut, but they've never been in the heart of our harder hurt neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another question. In terms of like some of those red flags that you were speaking about earlier and mentioning, and hoping that you would get notified about them sooner, is it a communication issue that can be improved between, I'm guessing maybe buildings and codes, where if there was a better system in place, they can notify you, your office can look into something and kind of teamwork a little bit better?
Well, I do enjoy all the site visits that we do get to take. Rarely do we look at one. I mean, a building just doesn't fall down. It erodes. It's just not going to fall down overnight. So it's kind of strange how we all kind of token them as emergencies, but the emergency started with the untreated, broken. It only got worse. The flag goes up. We know the building is sick, for lack of better ways of putting it. It's eroding, and nothing seems to change. Nothing's going to change until it becomes an emergency, where Mother Nature is just taken over. And gravity has pulled it. I think I know it's sometimes I wouldn't say a pick and choose, but it's triage in so many ways. Like, what can we handle? How can we handle? Why would it make sense to handle? I know it's a real loss when a building comes down and it's partnered in our row houses and they share a party wall. It can be really dangerous to the neighbor next door when they lost their neighbor and now their house is exposed. This kind of happens in some of these emergency demolitions, where I think these buildings, well, first of all, Albany's got many of them, so it's hard not to just target them. But anyone that's sharing a party wall, and we're going to tear half of it down and leave the other half standing, you're putting a lot of effort into restabilizing the other owner who exists and lives there, it's home. So so I think there has to be a picking and choosing of what could be stabilized. It's not like everything can be. Some things are too far gone, but those are just immediate buildings that I would think of that we should look at, put an extra eye on.
Right.
When one comes down.
Just curious, last question. I know you had mentioned you were doing some work over on Dove Street. So I represent the 7th Ward, which is the Delaware Avenue area, but it also starts over on Dove. There's a property it's on Dove Street between Myrtle and Park Avenue. It was a single family home. That I believe is one of the properties that would fall into the historic preservation, but for neighbors, as you were saying, it's been a major public safety issue, as well as a health issue, as well as environmental issue, really, for as long as it's been there, for at least 10 years like that. And so for neighbors who are having these issues or concerns, is there anyone on the commission that they can speak to get a better, understanding of knowledge of how to deal with a property like that next to them?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I'm all for one to begin with that would do it. But when the commission does go out on a site visit, typically there can only be 4 of us there and no more, because then we've created an issue with quorum there. But no, it's a great opportunity. That's one thing I really like about what I do, and I'm happy to get up and go to work every day, is really interacting with the community. And on Dove Street alone, we did 158, 157.
158 was really good, by the way. I mean, they all were, but 158 was a really good job.
That was one of our last projects over there on Dove Street. But no, but maybe there should be more of that. I believe that everyone on the Historic Resource Commission would welcome the idea of being part of that proactive team to go and meet with someone if they were willing to or wanted to.
Yeah.
And have a conversation with, if there was anyone there to have it with, but even those that are in a circumstance that have questions and don't find a way. I think we should be here to answer questions and meet and interact with them. I really do. To guide them, give them some advice moving forward. And it goes to the education thing and sharing what's available to them. And, some people might just like, what would this cost me? If I want to start saving, what would it cost me? And I think most of us on the Resource Commission could provide them with such information.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
Just being part of the educational process.
Right.
Thanks, Sergio.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Chris, again, for taking your time to meet with us today.
Again, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Wanted to close with me. Good night.
Okay, Eden, who do we got next?
So the last person that we have planned is Marilyn Kaplan. It's under a different name, but I'm assuming it's the same person.
Okay, send them in.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
We're going to give every commission member an opportunity to give us about 5 minutes, a brief bio about themselves, and then allow committee members and council members to ask questions. So the floor is yours.
I could not hear that very well. I think what you said is you want me to do an introduction and then you're gonna ask questions. Can you hear me better than I can hear you?
I hear
Okay.
you well. Can you guys hear me okay?
I'm sorry?
Oh, just want to check if people can hear me okay. I had to change computers because my laptop.
Yeah, it could be here, but I won't. If you can hear me okay, we'll work with it. Well, you called me, so you know who I am. I'm Marilyn Kaplan. I'm a practicing architect. I've had my own practice for 25 plus years, and I specialize in smaller scale restoration projects up and down the Hudson Valley, kind of north up into the southern Adirondacks. Sometimes I work with larger projects, sometimes I work with smaller projects, but am engaged primarily in nonprofit work. I have a special area of expertise on codes, dealing with codes for historic buildings and other existing buildings. And through that have been assisting Aaron and our chair, John, with our responsibilities to the council, working with Rick LaJoy. That's kind of the real short of it. I've worked for larger architectural firms. I've worked with the state. I ran the architectural unit at state parks many years ago, historic preservation. I've worked on the energy codes for the state of New York. That's it. And then have most of my time is spent on my own practice. I had until the last change of leadership and then COVID for a number of years, had been volunteering a half a day each week at the South End Improvement Corp. And that changed for some different reasons, but that was a great opportunity on my part, and certainly very, very helpful in thinking about the work that we do at the commission.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? No questions?
You don't
That-
see our hands? I think I put my hand up.
Oh, I don't see, I apologize, I don't see hands.
That's all right.
Okay,
If you don't mind, I'll just go.
yes,
Okay,
please, and if you
okay.
don't mind, just raising your hand. Again, I apologize, I had to change computers, and I guess the system's a little different than what I'm
That's
used to.
okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. Marilyn, I think you're a constituent of mine, first of all, so hi. And I may have missed it in your introduction, but how long have you been on the commission?
Oh, I was afraid you were going to ask that.
You don't have to be exact. I mean, are you like, was it like 80s, 90s,
I'm not like
2000s?
the 30-year version. No.
You're not the 30, but maybe you're like the
not on
10-year
the 30-year
version.
plan. I would guess about 4 years plus minus. That's a guess.
Okay, okay. The only reason I was asking was for your perspective on if sort of communications have improved between the, relevant agencies and parties that the commission deals with, and where you see the need for some improvement.
Relative to communications?
Whatever your role, and specifically we're thinking about the new legislation that the council passed last year. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, I'm pretty new, so so I'm just wondering if you feel that the legislation had some impact on your ability to have some input into the emergency demolition or that whole area. And if that's not your area, I mean, I know
no,
you're
that's
a codes expert, but okay.
That's my area. In fact, I just returned from a 3-month research fellowship on that topic out at the Getty in California. Oh, that's my area.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yes.
Our response, and I also prepared quite a bit of the last draft, the initial draft that was submitted. I think that the work that Rick LaJoy is doing and how he's grabbed hold of it, I think he's done really a terrific job given the other limitations that he's got. His heart is fully there. and I'm totally supportive of what he does. I wrote a piece in the TU maybe 2 years ago, an editorial that they published, which essentially said we're not doing enough about these buildings at all. And I have some pretty strong feelings about the role of code enforcement. The codes are not the problem. I mean, the codes are complicated and all sorts of things, and we can, the building codes, not the zoning code for a moment. But I think our real issue is the commitment that the city makes to the most vulnerable occupants, which are also the most vulnerable buildings. And whether that is better funding for code enforcement or some other ideas around that, which I do have. I think there's much, much more to be done. But I think that that legislation was a very good first step. We didn't know that you read it, to tell you the truth. I mean, we wrote it, it was accurate, it was correct, but there was a lot of questions in there and a lot of items raised, and we never heard anything back. So I do hope that there becomes a real, I think for the purpose of protecting those buildings, which is the role of the HRC, and improving and protecting the housing in various areas of the city that are pretty substandard. I think there's quite a bit of discussion that could occur, but that was not within our role of what we were asked about in terms of the emergency demolitions. But I would be delighted to pursue those conversations, possibly outside of our role of the HRC, because we're kind of limited as to what we do there.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah, and I would look forward to some of those conversations with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I can actually see now that
Thomas has a question. Hi, Thomas.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. And thank you, Marilyn, for your service. I noticed that your term actually ended in 2015. So if it was a 4-year term.
Ended in 2015?
Yeah, you've been, but we're going to keep you on now till 2024. So you're stuck with it for a couple more years.
Time.
But thank you for doing everything that you're doing. Just adding on to what Deb said. Now you brought up about those questions. Is there any way that you could forward over to, through Alfredo, those questions? I'd love to see them. You said there was like you had wrote something in the TU. I don't remember.
Well, those are two separate things. One was a perspective or whatever they called it in the TU a couple of years ago. And the second is in the report that we submitted to you. And I can certainly make sure that you have that those are both recirculated. Yeah. But
yeah, I'd love it. And I apologize that, we do go through a lot of legislation, a lot of reports, and, and I'm embarrassed, but yeah, I'd definitely like to look at it, moving forward. One of the other questions, and again, if there's anything that you think we could do as a council to strengthen and make things easier to protect some of our buildings, we're willing to work with you on that. And, it never ends. I mean, we're going to continue to develop, better practices and stuff.
A lot of the complication comes because of the land bank and the county and some of the restrictions that they place. I think we listed those or many of those in that report. Okay. So a lot of the complications are there. I can say I just gave a virtual talk last Friday, a statewide talk, believe it or not, to the state of Wyoming, American Institute of Architects. And it's a part of, it depends how committed a community or a locality is to those occupants and to those buildings. So for example, do we have enough people out inspecting those buildings? And Rick has so kindly said, listen, I don't want to throw anybody out in January. That's a horrible, horrible thing. And yet, how are we holding people accountable for the minimum standards? So it's complicated, but I think I've kind of decided in general, not having looked at all of the minimum housing codes and et cetera, Fair Housing Act, et cetera, in Albany, but It's really how well are we enforcing the codes that we have? How committed are we to those? And do we have enough boots on the ground doing that and a good enough system? And I know, for example, that even that changeover from the fire department, who's doing those inspections, fire department and building department, and they're just getting a computerized system up and going. But Rick's got a lot of really good ideas, and I think it's the part, if I may, of how committed is the city to really funding that and supporting that and making it a priority. Because we can do it. We can do it. We just need to make sure that there's enough staff, that the courts are in line, and that some of those other issues around the county as best possible can get resolved because of the purse strings that they hold for some of their properties and land bank.
Now, something that came up was that in restoring a historic building, is there ways that we could tweak the law that, instead of using a genuine wood window that's a certain style, that we could have it that, if it's vinyl or aluminum or whatever, and maybe triple pane so you get the energy efficiency? Do we need to look at that for, some people don't have the money to invest in the original type of material, and the building's just going to deteriorate? Is that something that we should look at, do you think? Or
there's some limitations to that. Because as a certified local government, we are responsible to comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards from the State Preservation Office and the National Park Service federal standards. But those aren't the worst costs. I mean, I would say the level of skill and knowledge on the commission is really high. And I've done training for a lot of other commissions. It's very, very high and very accommodating in many respects. The costs are not because you can't use vinyl windows. That's not the big issue. And I think that we could run into problems should we try to say we'll accept any window. But as part of the overall cost of a project, that's not really where the challenges are.
is it structural that, where do you see the cost? Is it the structure itself, or is there so many things you just
Yeah, it's kind of the whole thing. It's as if you're essentially building a new building. Now, in that piece that I wrote for the TU, my opinion, obviously I wrote it, was that those buildings are really important resources because on a one-by-one basis, if the city had a good support system, if we had a good system to encourage rehabilitation of those one-offs, that's how people can build wealth. And it's not by only getting developers in and building 20 or 30 or 100 units. That's a different thing. But individual people do not get to build wealth by their own sweat equity and their slow moving through projects. I think that what we saw in Albany in the 80s and 90s was real support from the improvement corporations and storefront improvement corporations, that people had great, and Troy does a really good job at it. We don't. But in the old days, when Chick was on Lark Street, you could walk in, there were a couple of architects there. They could walk you through the process. They were the project advocates. And we don't have any of that. So we don't have the resources now to support that kind of rehabilitation of the single buildings. And yeah, they're in tough shape, but I've worked on buildings in tough shape for 30, 40 years. So they're in tough shape. That's the way it is, but we can deal with that. There's also some tax credits for those projects that, not great, but they're the best we have. So, but I think that if we were ever able to really reconstruct a situation, maybe storefronts, maybe in neighborhoods, but certainly, absolutely, there were advocates for those buildings and the one-off rehabs that individuals could take, that would do us really, really well in the city.
Thank you so much.
That's not in the confines of the HRC either, but that's what I kind of think about.
Yeah, but we have to look at it as a city and as a council and as a planning committee. So thank you for your input.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or statements from any council members? Okay, well, thank you very much again for.
And thank you all for your time. Thank you for your service. Okay,
Thank you.
bye all.
Good day. Ian, I don't think we have anyone else today, correct?
That's it for today.
Okay, so let's go down the process of reappointment. Can I have a motion to reappoint Evan Tobin for another term on the Historic Resource Commission?
It was a positive recommendation, correct?
With a positive recommendation, yes. Thank you. Motion by Hyde, seconded by Deborah. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Can I get a motion for John Myers to be reappointed to the Historic Resource Commission with a positive recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. What's the proper term? I just forgot it. See, can I get a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Can I get a motion for Chris Hacker to be reappointed to the Historic Resource Commission?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? With a positive,
Aye.
Aye.
positive recommendation, right?
Positive recommendation.
Okay, good. I don't want to make that mistake again. Ian, I don't want to mess up. It's Mary. How do you?
Marilyn Kaplan.
Kaplan.
Marilyn Kaplan. Okay, thank you, Marilyn Kaplan. Can I get a motion to reappoint Marilyn Kaplan for another with a positive recommendation with for another term of the Historic Resource Commission?
Make a motion to make a positive recommendation for Marilyn Kaepernick.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, we had 3 members who were not able to meet with us today. I would like for us to allow them still move forward with their names, if possible, and allow them to either come to a caucus or maybe just, if they can't make caucus, give us a brief summary of their work. I wouldn't want to lose any members that again are volunteering their time because they weren't able to make a meeting. I think we have a lot of high quality individuals that we're lucky to have. Deborah, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I would ask that unless there's, I mean, I've read through all these materials. I know who these people are, that they've served, that their experience as the city historian, one, and several others have really extensive experience in this, that we not prolong anything, that we move them forward with a positive recommendation as well. But I understand if folks who are not familiar with these people are uncomfortable with that, but it's not to say that the council would not have a chance to speak with them potentially at caucus. But I think if anybody has been following the HRC at all and these folks, I hope that we can move everybody along.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, I'm not comfortable. We heard different things, like from Chris especially, and some other members on this, what we need to look at. I'm not saying I have anything against any of these people. Jack is like famous and stuff, but it's the opportunity to talk to the committee, number one. And and like I said, if even if we get them to talk to the council, I would feel a lot better. But just to give a statement, this is a once in, I don't know how many years that we're gonna have a chance to, well, some of these terms look like they end in 21, ends in 23. But I'm not, John actually ends at the end of this year, believe it or not, just looking at the list. So again, I'm just not comfortable. I would do maybe
That's
a
fine.
recommendation
I
or
don't-
something like that.
That's
You're
that's
talking
fine.
over me. That's not right, okay?
Oh, I
Guys,
apologize.
I'm
guys,
not finished. I don't like when somebody talks over me. But
Okay.
let's have a little bit decorum here as a council. So that's my opinion, and I'm going to just stay by it. Thank you.
Okay. What I was going to say was my recommendation would be that we move these individuals forward with the understanding that they be able to attend a caucus and speak to the full council. I do think we do have some great people that are willing to volunteer their time, and I don't want to prolong the process or make it seem as if we're holding their applications back. But I do respect the concerns of trying to speak with these individuals. But I also want to honor the fact that we do have some very good volunteers that are really, top quality. And I wouldn't want to make it seem like we don't want to move their names forward for any, because they weren't able to make today's meeting. So with that said, yes, Hyde.
So I'll just make the motion that we move the names forward out of committee without a recommendation pending they attend next council meeting, caucus or council meeting.
We got a second.
Well, we gotta get names on that.
Okay. I don't have, let me see the names here.
So, Eden, can you?
Assemblyman McEnany.
So I can try to have them come to caucus, but that's in 2 days. So I can't promise that they'll be free to come because they'll probably be informed tomorrow that like by the time all the dust settles. So I'll invite them and everything. It's not a lot of notice.
If they can't make it tomorrow, maybe it's possible to invite them to Monday's call.
Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, Monday would probably be better than Wednesday's caucus.
We'll give them both options, I think.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think you have a question on the floor. If Councilwoman Zamer, are you asking a question?
I was going to, if that's okay.
Sure, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I apologize for speaking over you. Councilmember Hoey, I meant absolutely no disrespect. I hear things in my kitchen going on. I certainly did not mean any disrespect by that. And that was my only question, was if these folks are unavailable for the caucus, but it sounds like we would have another opportunity at the meeting in 2 weeks. And that sounds fine to me, voting them out of committee without a recommendation since they weren't here. I only wanted to state my support for those folks who I know, and I know that they've done a very good job in their roles. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, Eden, what's the name? Let me go down my list. Let's start with Honorable Jack McEnany. Could I have a motion to move Honorable John McEnany for an additional term at the Historical Resource Commission with neutral recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Quick note, if anyone's watching, if Jack's watching, we feel nothing but love for you, so we're going to pass you with a favor because we do appreciate all the work that you've done for our city. So want to make sure that's very clear with that motion. Next, can I get a motion for Lee? Eden, you gotta help me with the last name here. I don't wanna,
I believe Pickaninny. I could be saying it wrong. Pickney.
okay. Well, we all have the written name. Can I get a motion for Lee Pickney, reappointment to the
So-
Historical Resource Commission with a neutral recommendation?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Seconded by Hyde. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous. Thank you. And finally, we have Jennifer. Can you help me with that one again, Eden?
Garrity,
Garrity. Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to reappoint Jennifer Garrity with to the Historical Resource Commission with a neutral recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? That's a unanimous consent. Okay, I think those are all the recommendations we have for today. Am I wrong with that, Eden? Okay, so that was the biggest heavy lift that we had when it comes to appointments. The next one we have is we have one more planning, with a planning committee appointment, and we also have a lot of other things coming back on the docket. But these appointments I wanted to get on our docket and get them through the process as quickly as possible, so that we didn't have these individuals waiting for too long, or that we didn't hold up any of the business they need to get done. Are there any other thoughts or comments from committee members?
Yes.
Tom?
Yeah, now I noticed that Norman Rice passed away. Has anybody applied or have we put out a call for that seat?
if he just recently passed away, probably not. How long ago?
I believe it was last year. I think probably summer, maybe.
Okay. And is that a mayor appointment or is that a council appointment?
That's council. And his term ends, it looks like 12/31 of next year. So yeah.
We'll reach out to Aaron Glennon, who has been extremely helpful in making sure that the vacancies are filled and filled timely, and get some more information. And if a call for applicants needs to go out, we'll make sure that it goes out. We'll float it past the chair and get his final approval.
Thank you.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I wasn't aware of that, so thank you, Tom. Okay, any other thoughts or concerns? Okay, well, thank you everybody for your time. Hope you can get out there and enjoy whatever's left of this nice day. Can I get a adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Thank
Amen.
you.
Ethan, stop the stream.
Thank you, Eden.